I haven't yet played Quake Champions because, well, let's just say I'm not a fan of playing an unfinished project, whether it's free or in early access, no matter how good it is. I don't want to get tired of a game before it is even officially released or even finished. But I'd like to point out that I am, I guess you could say, a veteran of the Quake franchise. I've been playing the game since the 90s, and have been playing Quake 3 almost religiously since the 2000s. I've even made some mods for Quake 1, Quake 3, and even Doom 2. And I'm fairly active in both the Doom and Quake communities. But one thing I noticed that is really upsetting to me is the differences between the Doom and Quake communities, particularly with Quake 3. Let me give some background. Probably the number one place for all things Quake 3 related would be Quake3World.com. But when compared to Doom World or even Quake1.com, it's actually not very active. I posted a comment in the forums section about a high quality audio mod that I've created. But that was a year ago, and it's still near the top of the forums page, and for those that are unaware, these pages are organized in order of most recently posted. There's also this announcement post for a mod called Knockout, which in my opinion is one of the greatest custom modes created for this game. Think of it as a cross between Quake and Super Smash Bros. It's a lot of fun. So how many people replied to this post? 1, and it just says, "Interesting, I'm gonna try this." No other posts, no feedback, no suggestions, nothing. Even my post had no replies until I literally said, "Hello? Is anyone out there?" And then finally, after days of nothing, a guy says, "We're too busy to reply." What? What do you mean you're too busy? You think that this site was for some small obscure game, but no. This is Quake 3 we're talking here. A game that spawned Quake Live and Quake Champions, being a dedicated online shooter that revolutionized esports and online multiplayer in general. Why did this game die so quickly? There's even a post just a few lines down called, "Is Quake 3 dying?" To understand this question, a little context is in order. Quake 3 Arena spawned a subgenre of first-person shooters called arena shooters. Unreal Tournament and other games like it are referred to this genre as well. And they were massive back in the day. And like with all things that were once popular, they became immortalized in the cult following communities. Unless we're talking about Quake 3. But there is a reason. The most prominent types of servers are running a mod called Challenge Pro Mode Arena, or simply referred to as CPMA. What CPMA does is strip down the world building and art style of the game in order to emphasize the base mechanics underneath. The opponents are stripped of their identity and all replaced with the character Keel, whom not only is the tallest character in the game, but also the loudest with metal feet that makes a lot of obvious noise, with unchangeable bright colors to make him easy to spot miles away. On top of that, a lot of hardcore CPMA players would even turn off the light maps so that nothing could be hidden in shadow, and even bring down the texture quality below what is even possible in the game's built-in options menu in order to prevent detailed textures from complicating the scenery. All of these things and much more made Quake 3 more pro-gaming focused, so that outcomes are less determined by random or accidental elements. This created a subgenre called pure arena shooters. I get why this was favored in the esports scene, because when money is on the line here, nice graphics and visual and audio differences between players and environments can slightly affect one's performance due to unanticipated situations. But these type of concerns only affect people where winning is too important, whereas in the casual gaming scene, it robs the game of its charms and dynamics. Take for instance, picking a character. Usually the colorful characters that stand out more are much quieter, like the characters Slash and Anarchy, but then you have other characters like Ranger and Sarge that use a more subdued outfit that blends better in certain environments, but do have heavy footstep sounds to keep things fair and even. id Software tried their best to balance the game without sacrificing the visual and audio flares that add character and variety. Also, look at these amazing textures and environments. CPMA is for people that take the gameplay far too seriously, which, newsflash, is not what the majority of gamers want. It's too extreme, cold, and calculative. Okay, so why is Quake 3 dying? Can't newcomers play vanilla Quake while the experts play CPMA? Apparently not. CPMA has cannibalized Quake 3. because whenever somebody wants to get into Quake 3, they either have to struggle to find players online or be forced to adopt these pro modes like CPMA. But this is really bad because a veteran CPMA player is just way too brutal of an opponent for newcomers that it can actually be really mentally and emotionally demeaning. How do I know? Because even someone such as myself that has been playing Quake 3 for a long time cannot for the life of me beat these people. This is the biggest problem that Quake 3 is suffering from. I see it all too often. There are so many posts out there of people asking for advice on how to get into Quake 3, and the pros keep telling them that the best way to play is to use CPMA. No, don't do that. You're throwing them into the deep end, for Pete's sake. Because of the popularity of CPMA, id Software saw an opportunity to profit from this. So then, a re-release of Quake 3 called Quake Live was born. It's basically an officially released version of CPMA, which means, for newcomers, once again, it's hard to get into. But about a decade ago, ZeniMax Media bought id Software, and they realized that Quake Live and other games like it actually weren't very big. This is why Quake Champions now exists. Champions is pretty much a scoff at CPMA and Quake Live, because unlike some of the earlier teams of the old id Software, ZeniMax, especially its subsidiary Bethesda Softworks, saw that the so-called pure arena shooter is actually experiencing a slow death due to its inability to be palatable for newcomers, which is why it's losing players. There are many stats that reinforce this notion, but I think the late Mr. TotalBiscuit put it best during his showcase of the beta of Quake Champions, and I just love the brutality of his honesty. Have a listen.
Well, the NDA lifted on Quake Champions, and the open beta has been running for the past few days. However, its announcement did not exactly come along with rapturous applause from all of those looking at it. Indeed, the game has received a lot of criticism that have made some interesting claims about it. And many of those have consisted of something of a purist attitude, claiming this is not the Quake that they wanted, that they want a pure arena shooter, that they want to go back to the good old days. Here's the thing about that argument. I don't believe that it's supported in reality. I don't believe there is, in fact, anything that proves that these people exist or in large enough number to actually support a product. And the basis of that argument comes from the fact that there have been games that have attempted to do the pure arena shooter experience and have done so even quite recently. Now, guess how many of those games have done well? The answer would be none of them. None of them have done well whatsoever. I'm talking about games like Toxic. I'm talking about games like Xenotic, Warsaw, Reflex Arena. That's a mix of premium games and free games. Some that have free-to-play modes. Those are 4 different arena shooters that are, for the most part, pure arena shooters. No crazy gimmicks or anything along those lines. They are similar to Quake, they are similar to Unreal Tournament, and none of those games have a solid player base. Now, my argument is this. If there really is a massive, latent audience of pure arena shooter fans that are just itching and waiting for the right opportunity and the right game to come along to bring them all back into the fold, to create a huge, glorious scene, if that audience actually exists, then I want to know what game is required to actually bring them out of the woodwork, because apparently it was none of those. Which makes me wonder, well, what are your requirements? Now, here's what I think. If arena shooters were truly what I like to call the desperation genre, a genre in which there is a massive audience that is not being served, that are desperate to get their fix, then that audience would have gravitated towards any game that even remotely resembled Quake 3 Arena. They would have gravitated towards Toxic, Warsaw, Xenotic, etc., etc. Reflex Arena being, again, another very recent release that is not doing well at all in terms of its concurrent player numbers. It would hardly be the first time that a game's tried it, and you can make the argument, well, those games they do something wrong. Okay, well, what is the perfect arena shooter? Because it sounds to me like the perfect arena shooter is Quake 3 Arena or Quake Live, and those games already exist. Quake Live's player base is dipping. It's been dipping for years. It still exists, no doubt, but the transition over to Steam and some of the changes they made had a very brief revival of the player base and pretty much died off. A lot of people said, oh, well, the reason it died off is because they made those changes, like loadouts and such. Well, as it turns out, the vast majority of servers for Quake Live don't even run that right now. So no, that is not the reason at all. So my belief is quite simply this. These purists, as they were, like to brag. They like to complain, and they like to wistfully wish for experiences they had at LAN parties 10 or 15 years ago. But I don't think that that should influence the development style of any game, and I don't think that it should be taken into account. Because if those numbers were big enough, they'd have already gravitated towards existing experiences that pretty much fill that niche.
Some might say, well, what does he know? He doesn't play a lot of Quake. Well, that's completely irrelevant. You don't have to be a diehard fan to look at the statistics. But it's not just him. So many people, including myself, that are massive fans of this franchise and of arena shooters in general, will tell you that it's true. Even someone that lives and breathes Quake, such as, Rocket Jump Ninja, will tell you that same thing. He posted a video where he covers this issue in detail. It may be a little too long to be included in this video, so here's a snippet.
In my opinion, Quake is still the best game ever made, but it's not the most popular. Sure, it's subjective, but since starting this channel, I've seen a lot of people show interest in the game, just they'd never seen it before, and didn't know how to get into it. The fact is, in Quake, we've struggled to have a big community since Counter-Strike came out, and that was back in 1999. Quake simply isn't holding the attention of new players, or it's not reaching new players. To make it worse, when new players do come, they either get totally destroyed by old players, or sometimes even abused for being new, and often kicked from the servers too. Quake has too much toxicity in the community. Too many people who think they're amazing and only want to play with other good players. I do get that though. I was streaming last night on a new person's team, and we were getting destroyed. It was basically 4 vs 3. It's frustrating and boring, but I didn't insult the new player or have a go at them. I'd rather lose a few games than have no new players. So to all you old school players, if you really love Quake, please be friendly and help the new players. You're good at Quake? That's great, but how about you become a good ambassador for the game? Quake should be the top. How about we give new players a chance to join us in what we love instead of hating on them?
If you want to hear the rest, I will leave a link to this video in the description below. But even before you watch the video, I think it's pretty apparent that a change is desperately needed, and id Software is doing the best they can to make that needed change. I don't know if Quake Champions will save the arena shooter, but if there is a game out there that can, this is it.